Welcome to the Imperfect Men's Club podcast, or welcome back. Maybe if you've been listening to us. Today we're going to talk about, we're going to start with the same foundation we always do, which is our kind of flywheel of life. And to remind people that maybe haven't heard this before, um, picture a wheel with concentric circles outward, like dropping when you drop a stone in the water. The first circle, the next one, and so on. It gets bigger and broader and deeper. And we picked 5 areas of life around the center of the circle, which is the self or the ego. And Jim's done a great job of putting together a list of self hyphen words like self actualization and self awareness. Today, we're going to talk about self doubt and self doubt. And then we're going to go outside of, like we always do, to the 5 areas: their health, profession, relationships, worldview, and what's the last one, Jim? I always forget the 5th one.
Money.
Money. Yeah. That's kind of a Freudian slip there, huh? A little mental block going on.
Yeah.
But self-doubt, it came up. I brought it up when we were talking earlier because of a recent bout I had with it. Really overwhelming self-doubt, and we can get into that story a little bit. But and then what happened in our kind of pregame is we attached it to profession because we're middle-aged men, and so many of our peers have discovered at some point that their self-worth is 100% in what they do for a living. And if that changes, or when that changes for any reason, they're stuck with this, what do I do now? Talk about self-doubt. And then the other thing is, this is kind of an emotional condition. So it also connects to the spoke of health and mental health and emotions and thoughts. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But we don't have to talk about just my recent experience. Jim, you and I had a couple of different stories. You want to share your thoughts on this topic and where you want to go with it?
Yeah. First of all, again, thanks for starting off with our framework that we use. It's referred to of all different types of things: a flywheel, a ring. But in the middle, it all starts with ourselves, and it starts with self-awareness, and then these 5 parts of our life that we've identified that are going on, whether we're aware of it or not. What's earlier when we were speaking before we started recording, I think what you shared with me, your situation, I want to hear more about that. But the word you used was self-doubt. And the first thing I think of when I think of self-doubt is what comes with that, right? In terms of your profession, not uncommon as a man, that's our self-identity. So when there's a major change in your career or your profession, it's hard not to lose your self-identity. And as you were saying, Mark, that will happen sooner or later.
Yeah.
Particularly in this day and age, right? There's so much change. And then the other one that goes right with self-doubt is your self-worth. Because if your self-worth is down, then your confidence is down. And when your confidence is down, nothing seems to fall into place. Everybody just seems to be taking a shot at you. And that's just kind of the way life goes. So, but why don't you start off with the definition of self-doubt?
Okay. Yeah, that's I like reading the definition of what we're talking about. It seems to be helpful to everybody.
Yeah. And our definitions are basically just a Google search. I like to get the modern version of it. We could grab a dictionary and get but the modern version, if you were to Google it.
Yeah, and I think one of them, we saw the Wikipedia one, and then I saw one from the Webster's dictionaries, and we kind of cobbled one together because just to get the point across. Self-doubt is a feeling of having no confidence in your abilities and decisions. Self-doubt can be defined as a state of uncertainty about the truth of anything. It could be about thoughts, beliefs, emotions, opinions, decisions, self-views, or any quote unquote truth we hold in our minds. We have a sense that we're stable.
Yeah. Well, a lot there, huh? Lot there.
There's a few different podcast episodes in there.
well, let's since you volunteered, let's talk about what you've recently experienced where you had some self-doubt. Good news is that definitely took a turn for the good. So I love the story. You share as much as you're comfortable with, but I've seen the journey, so I appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and thank you for being on the journey with me. You've been very
Mm,
helpful.
mm,
Got lucky to have, which is another clear thing that if you're experiencing self-doubt, surround yourself with good people. That's
mhm.
one way to get yourself out of that place. And I was fortunate to have been able to do that. But yeah, so I gained a new client in a slightly different area, kind of a subset of professional development, I suppose it would be a leadership. And and I'm putting together a program that would extend the length of the contract to become a financially very profitable, very sustainable contract client. Uh, and I'm putting this together in preparation for a meeting this morning where the possibility exists that we don't want to do this was one of the directions it could go. I had no justifiable reason to believe that was even a possibility, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
But I think it had to do with, it was so important to me for so many reasons. It was financial stability for an extended period of time. And as an entrepreneur, Jim, that when you get one of those or a few of those that's a big deal. We're eating what we kill. And
Mhm,
I was getting stomach pains. I didn't
mm,
sleep well. Um, and I started to fall back on some of the tools that I have, thank goodness. My meditation practice, my breath work, my exercise, my new exercise regime, a couple of phone calls to trusted friends, conversation with my kid, my girlfriend. I got a good support staff, but I was overwhelmed with self-doubt. And you know me well enough to know, Jim, I'm a pretty confident guy. So
mhm,
this is not, this is foreign to me. And it scared me,
mhm,
and then, I get off the meeting. Not only did it go well, and I got way more than I ever thought I was gonna get.
mhm. That's great to
And
hear. Yeah.
yeah, I also was complimented by the guy that is my client, the decision maker on the other end. He called me after the meeting and said, "I just wanted to share with you. I knew this was going to go well because we've spoken a few times, but it went way better than I could ever have imagined."
Mm,
So it's like, man, self-doubt it was debilitating for me, but it was also for I shouldn't say it was for no reason, because I understood why I was feeling the way I was feeling, but I didn't need to be in any sense of self-doubt, because I deep down inside I was confident I could do this, and so was everyone else that I talked to.
mhm.
So that's the story in a nutshell, but you can poke at it if you want, or maybe you got
Well,
a
yeah,
story of your
let's
own.
break it down. I think I obviously I think of myself when you were talking about it. Sometimes you could have been in protective mode. Protective mode as
Yeah.
in there had been other situations where this you were really hoping it would turn out differently, and you were, again, this is all subconscious, right? You were
Mhm.
subconsciously preparing yourself maybe for some disappointment, because we've all had disappointment, but
Mhm.
that could have been one of the things. Um, and again, you were in a protective mode that for news. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that it could have been some of that, or where was the self doubt coming from? Had there been
Yeah.
other experiences
Well, I
that
think
didn't
that
turn out in this way, and what was different about this time versus the past?
yeah, no, it's a great question. I think, we've both been in sales our whole lives, and you don't sell everything. You don't sell to everyone. Most people say
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
so that would indicate I'm fully prepared for this. I
Yeah.
mean, people have been saying no to me my whole life because I've been asking for stuff my whole life.
but
So
yeah, you're somewhat conditioned to to accept the no, and you were maybe going in protective mode because you were conditioning yourself.
no, no question, no question. I think a lot of what we do is based on our survival instincts.
Yep.
I want to
That,
survive. I
that's
need to
exactly
survive
where I'm
this.
going with this. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, and I think that's a driver of many, many, many of the decisions we make. I think
Mhm.
it's the initiator of almost everything that we do. And
Mhm.
then we process that, well, am I really in survival mode? That's kind of aggressive for this. This is just, I want this person to be nice to me. It's like, well, if they don't, who cares? The
Yeah.
bigger, the bigger you make the thing, the more this happens in my experience. But I
Mhm.
also
Mhm.
think there's got to be some subconscious blockage from childhood or
Oh, of course.
adolescence, or
Yeah.
my divorce knocked the confidence out of me for a long time. But
Yeah.
that's a long time ago, so you know
No, but it's a long time ago. But I'm glad you mentioned it, Mark, because it's a long time ago. It doesn't mean it's completely gone. And maybe it could take decades. Sometimes these trauma, we all have it, whether you're aware of it or not. It comes back in different times in different ways,
oh yeah, oh yeah,
and just because you thought it went away doesn't mean it's still not there. Again, it's about the protective mode. It's about and how much we do to probably position ourselves for it not to happen again unconsciously,
yep, yep. No, I think
making
we're all,
moves to make sure that you'll never get close to that hot pan again.
yeah. No, there's no we've talked about this for years. It's kind of how we each other years
Yeah,
ago.
yeah,
This issue of what is our subconscious mind doing to drive our behavior, and is what can we do about that? But to stay on the topic of self doubt, I think you brought up another phrase that I think is directly connected to it, which is self worth. And I think
yeah.
that,
Like, I mean, we'll get into that. Let me share this quote with you. I think it was very relevant. A bad day for the soul is a good day. No, I screwed this one up. a, a bad day for the ego is a good day for the soul.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
what
No, we were
what
talking
what it
about that.
means is when your ego gets when you get bad news and you take a real gut shot in your ego, it actually is a good day for the soul. It means that humility could shape you in a better way if you let it. That's
Yeah,
the whole
well,
get rather we grow bitter or we grow better. It's a
yeah,
decision. It
yeah.
falls right into that. But I do think that it always ties back to our self worth and where we get that from, and it's from
Well,
others. Yeah,
yeah, and I think certainly my self worth was at stake
of course it was.
in this particular situation, for lack of a better phrase. But yeah, in hindsight, I after the fact, not only did I get the big win, I got the compliment on top of the big win, better than I ever expected it would be. And I was overwhelmed after the fact, Jim. It was a couple hours before we started recording here. Um, I broke down. I started
Yeah,
like shaking and tearing up.
that's
It was
cool.
like
Yeah,
it was cathartic.
yeah,
It was cathartic. And then I pinged a couple people, and I got a couple pings back, and yeah, I reached out, and I thanked you before we started recording. I thanked a couple other people, because as soon as I made a few of my friends aware of my circumstances, they jumped right up in support of me, and then they wanted to be the first one to congratulate me. And I think
yeah.
that's so much good coming out
Yeah.
of something
No,
that just yesterday
yeah,
was.
let me, if I could, Mark, let me comment on that. I think what you showed was gratitude, and that's another one that we often forget about. It's such an important quality to be able to take time and show gratitude to others that maybe helped you along the way.
Yeah,
It's we forget about it, but it does mean a lot to the people around you because it makes them feel like they had some contribution to that. So that's pretty
yeah.
cool.
No,
You
it's
did that.
and it's really fun to express your gratitude to people, and it's another testament to the idea that none of us do any of this shit by ourselves.
Yeah.
You don't do anything good by yourself. You always have help. You know, so
And it's why the first one of the self is the self awareness. I think this is you've worked you worked hard on yourself, and I believe this is the result of that. Good things come, but there's times when it didn't look like it was going to pay off. I'm sure there's times when you're going, why am I doing this? Am I really doing the right thing? Am I going, why don't I just go back to what I used to do or something? But you took some chances.
well, I
You made
did.
some bets.
I did. I took some chances, and one of the interesting things about it was, normally, like as a recruiter, I would do a thorough conversation with the client about exactly what he needs, why he needs it, money, budget. I mean, just thorough dump, like a 45-minute conversation, know exactly what I'm going to go serve. And then I do the same thing with the candidate. So I'm by the time I introduce those two people in my world, I got a pretty good idea of the probability of success, because I know so much about the circumstances.
Mhm.
I went into this one with no context. It was like I didn't get any feedback. I was just tasked with building a career, I had some general topical information, and I had a conversation or two with the decision maker, who's a really good guy. But then I started to dig into all the work during that digging and researching and construction of all of that and foundational work. I wasn't getting any feedback from anybody. Yep, you're doing the right thing. You're going in the right direction. That's good. Keep doing that. I got none of that. And that was also new to me. I've
Yeah.
never been in a situation like that before.
Yeah. There's something else that I thought of. I think it's worth mentioning is that, and again, we don't need to get into specifics, but something else uh, was find out. Another thing that you had done in the past had ended, right? Another some other business stuff in that relationship. At
Yep.
least the way you shared it with me was that's it. I'm done. And
Yep.
it is that saying when one door closes, another one opens, or
Hmm.
or or did it really maybe open up you in a way that allowed you to be somebody you couldn't be with that other uh,
Yeah.
situation we are in.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the confidential nature of that statement because it's probably needs to stay that way for a while.
Hmm.
And I'm not interested in bashing anybody or beating anybody up, but I think the other aspect of that, the two things of that closing that door were it creates so much space because
That's
so much
yeah,
space was occupied
that's
by
right.
that emotionally draining circumstance.
That's yes,
And then the more you stay in something that's not serving you, then what starts happening is you start feeling guilty and you start
yeah,
feeling bad about yourself. Why are
yeah,
you doing this? Why are you being such
yeah,
a flake? Just get out.
yeah.
And
No
it's
question.
amazing how challenging that is. But
So
I know I'm going to
also,
look.
yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to get this thought in. It's also was probably not good for your self confidence,
No,
and so it was the best thing that
self-respect.
ever happened, right?
It's
That,
gonna
that,
be.
that
It's gonna be for sure in hindsight. It already almost is, but
well, it sounds
and
like
then
it already is, but that's
yeah,
that.
yeah. The
Uh,
timing of that, I want to reemphasize what you said. That one door closed, and like 2 days later, another one just blew wide open. I mean,
yeah,
it was like, did one lead to the other? Maybe in
uh,
part.
yeah,
I don't know,
yeah.
but
Uh,
it's interesting to think about.
But it is because the timing. I think again as I get older, I don't believe in coincidences. It's not a coincidence, right? I think there
Hmm.
is more going on sometimes. So it is allowing yourself to make room for new opportunities and yeah, I it's not just time, it's your energy. Like you said, that other venture that you were doing, it may not have occupied that much of your time, but it certainly was occupying your attention
Oh,
and your energy.
no
So
question.
I
No
think
question.
that's a whole other podcast in itself.
Yeah.
It's not just the time; it's the energy that something takes. Some people in some situations are just draining everything about them, right? And then
No.
when it's over, yeah, you miss it a little bit, or but then before you know it, you realize, wow, I feel like I'm 15 pounds lighter today.
Yeah, it's
Eh,
the recognition piece is like when you're in it and you're getting pulled down or slapped around or
Yeah,
disrespected or whatever, you're like, yeah, it's whatever. Life's hard. Get a helmet. I can handle this. Just stop
yeah,
whining. And it's like, but then you get out and you're like, wow,
yeah.
that was like an anvil on my shoulders.
It
The recognition is crazy.
yeah, it reminds me back. This is a long time ago. We used to train with those ankle weights you used to put on.
Yep.
Did you ever use those? So
Yeah, I did.
I
I
would
did.
train. I would run the hills with ankle weights. Right? It wasn't much weight, right? It was just they just wrap around your ankles
Yep.
and you'd run. But when and then you run up the hill, but when you took those off and you were on a flat surface, wow, you felt like you were on rockets behind you, right?
You could fly. Yeah, you
You
could
could
fly.
fly around.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, and I do think that over time we get these ankle weights on us and we don't even know they're there. They just
Yeah.
become part of our
Yeah.
socks and we don't realize it. And then when they're removed, you're just light and you're agile and you're moving
Yeah.
around
Yeah,
freely.
it's so relative. And another thing that comes to mind is going back to this surrounding yourself with good people. Like one of the things that you do for me, and I would like to think I do for you, is when something like this comes up in conversation, we both kind of go into advisor slash agent roles for the other.
Yeah.
And the context and clarity that that brings, even if it's not so much context and clarity, it's confirmation. You know, it's
Hmm.
going to be okay. You're good at this. You're going to be
Hmm.
fine. You
Hmm.
might want to consider this, or you might want to consider that. And I think there's a lot of middle-aged men, there's a lot of men in general, because of our imperfections. Um, we hold on to that shit,
Yeah.
like I'm strong enough that I can fix this myself.
Hmm.
Well,
Hmm.
that's probably stupid. It's limiting. And the other thing about that is when you reach out to people and to ask of them, one could think, well, that's asking a bit much. But what I find is the person that you're asking for their help and their opinion is flattered that you're asking, you know? So some of this stuff is counterintuitive, but I think that, and how many guys I've talked to that are in career transition, self-doubt is a big part of that.
Yeah.
I doubt whether I can get out there and find another thing. I got a family to feed. I can't take any risk. Is anybody else going to like me as much as these guys like me? I
Yeah.
can hide here. I've talked to a lot of people that when they finally broke free from a toxic environment or a shitty job or a shitty boss, um, they just life just changed.
Yeah. Well,
And
let's talk about where self doubt leads to, right? Once you have self doubt, then your self worth starts to set in, and then before you know it, it's depression. You get in a bad mood, depression. But this statistic I shared with you earlier: 50,000 men commit suicide every year. Excuse me, 50,000 suicides are committed every year. 80% of them are men,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
you talk about a statistic that's sad. Yeah,
yeah,
you 80% of them are men.
yep,
Uh,
yep.
50,000 is a lot of people.
Yeah, I
Um,
think I heard the other day that fentanyl is the number one killer of men in the U.S. Second is suicide.
Interesting.
I think I heard that correctly. But these
Yeah.
are all I think these are all, they're not unique to our time, but they feel to me, and maybe to you because we've been here for a while. You almost 60 years, me just over 60 years have been here. This seems like the one of the most unstable times ever, uncertain times ever, confusing times ever. And
Mhm.
and I don't know if that's 100% true or not, but it feels that way to me. And I think that's probably driving some of the suicide stuff.
Yeah.
Social media,
Well, but
COVID.
let's speak to this. Let's talk about this because you're right. It's I also am finding, and I have some friends that just recently spoken to that, like you and I, are excited and optimistic about the future to come. So it's not everybody, but it's who you surround yourself with, and it's we talk about it as like the second act, right? You had your core profession that you provided for your family, or your main skill set was one thing. And at this stage in our life, we can have a second career or a second act. uh,
Mhm.
I know some refer to it as after retirement, but it's not a retirement. It's actually a start of something new. I don't personally like to use the word retirement because that's just a phase, right? A retirement of a career. But at this stage, and there's so many things we can do with our something you referred to earlier. Is we have wisdom that somebody in their 20s or 30s and maybe in 40s doesn't have, that you could
Mhm.
share, that clearly has value particularly with the business application. So, um, but yeah, I think that if you're not, to your point, Mark, if you're not surrounding yourself with people that that see the opportunities or get excited about things, um, it has to somehow, particularly as a man, has to refer to money or making money, because that's the scorecard, that's the scoreboard that rewards us for our worth or our contributions.
Yep. Yep.
And
Yeah, I think from a worldview standpoint, I think if you have a situation where self-doubt starts to creep in, and then you put on top of that, the wars that are going on, the fact that it's an election cycle, what the media has turned into in terms of just bad information and misleading, climate
wow,
change,
yeah,
COVID. I mean, these are external pressures collectively. I think it's a pressure cooker that I've never seen before. And
Mhm.
one of the things that I've done, and in hindsight, I suppose it was purposeful. I suppose I was doing it in response to some of these external pressures or whatever. I started picking up these habits that can get you out of these self-doubt places. And I was leaning on them last night, man. I got to tell you, meditation,
Mhm.
breath work, exercise, visualization, right? Conversations with happy, good, optimistic people,
Mhm.
prayer. There's tools available. None of the things that I just described cost any money.
Yep.
They require small amounts of attention on a consistent basis over time,
Yeah.
incremental.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that kind of pops into my head.
Well, it
Thank
fits
you.
right into our section about health, right? It's your physical health, your mental health, but you bet it has a lot to do with exercise, food, all that plays into this. But your surroundings, can you? Not everybody has access to surround themselves with other people. That's,
Yeah.
I guess,
Yeah.
one of the reasons we started the Imperfect Men's Club, right? It's a club where you can be around people more like yourself, or that maybe have different thoughts about
Well,
life, the
well,
outlook of life, and
Well,
so on.
it's what's interesting about, and we'll develop the culture of the club over time, but in its nation stages, it's exactly what you're talking about. One of the things that I'm always almost tempted to say, but I hate these two words, safe space, right?
Mhm.
Like I'm using it with a different meaning. Like you're going to
Mm.
come into this club, and you can talk about anything, and no one will take offense. So that's safe, but it's not what safe space means to a lot of people. It's like, no, you can't say anything objectionable or hurtful or critical. Fuck that. That's not what I'm talking about. Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah. It reminds you, most important conversation you'll ever have is with yourself, and that's a
yeah.
crazy person. So you have to interrupt that conversation with
Yeah.
with others, and those others will shape those conversations with yourself and with others. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you're having the conversation with the same people all the time, and it's the same narrative, whether it's the headline news or politics, no wonder you start to self doubt everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
again, I don't want to get on this rant about our media and our politicians, but it is very sad. They clearly are poking at the general public to agitate them, to create stories that sometimes don't even exist. A story of a story. They talk about each other,
Yeah.
and that's why,
Yeah.
like I said, I'm now on my full second month. Although I did take a break and watched a couple YouTube videos over the weekend, and I feel like shit actually. Now I think, so I'm going back on the wagon.
It's a good thing, man. I mean, it's almost like they're purposely trying to create self-doubt about our future or
Yeah,
about who's who and what's what.
yeah.
I just saw a very globally world renowned Chinese, I believe, meteorologist, physicist, engineer, and he was so completely debunking that carbon dioxide is a threat to anything. It's what makes plants grow. It's like, it's not just like we say this all the time. That's the self-doubt that's being created around these topics that are ostensibly life-threatening, therefore quite scary, anxiety creating, self-doubt creating
Yeah,
mechanisms. It's purposeful, you
yeah,
know, it's purposeful. It's disgusting.
yeah,
But
yeah. My this one I'm just getting. Um, what's the word? Just somewhat amazed about is electric cars, right? This obsession with electric cars,
mhm,
and how they're going to save the world. When if you really start to understand the technology, sure, it saves on carbon emissions, but the battery, they're some bad stuff. And if you look at what it takes, the math still doesn't is not in their favor as far as what it takes to
no,
generate the energy, the fossil fuel to burn the energy, to create the energy in order to run the car. It's
mhm,
we're not there, and anybody that can do simple second grade math can do those calculations. We're just pushing the problem to different places, and again, I own I have my second Tesla, so I'm not criticizing people that buy electric cars. It's just it's kind of mind blowing though to believe. I mean, if you're so smart, can't you do the simple math on that
Well,
equation?
on all of these topics, whether it's electric cars or solar energy or wind power or climate change, these supposedly uh, so these nobody's looking into the future repercussions of any of this stuff. They're making assumptions on huge issues like where do you get it? One that battery dies, where are you going to put it?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's what I'm talking about.
okay. Yeah, I know. When the wind solar blade needs to be replaced, where are you going to put those? Who makes those blades? Oh, the Chinese. That's interesting. Yeah. And when you stick one of those things in the ocean and whales start floating up on the fucking shore, anybody gave that any consideration? I mean, they don't think about
Yeah,
any of this shit. It's just get a cause, create self-doubt in everyone's mind about the existing solution, right? And
yeah.
then just push the cause because you're a cause person and that makes you really good person. It's bullshit.
Yeah, there's no question though. We've benefited from some of these technologies, especially solar and wind. But yeah, there's no question chopping up a couple birds along the way when you've got these big.
Yeah. Yeah. And people saying again, creating self-doubt, people saying things where I go out of my way, and I've told you this a million times. If I don't know something, I'm very comfortable saying I don't know. All
Yeah,
right. That's not because I doubt myself. It's because I know I don't yet know. And then you have two decisions to make. I don't care about this enough to go vet it. So I'm just going to dismiss it because it's a waste of my time. Or I do care enough about what it is. So I'm going to go vet it and research it. And I think most people are lazy when it comes to that. And I'm not
yeah,
claiming to be a better worker than anybody. I'm just saying if you want to really know what's going on with anything and you're in a position of doubt because you don't yet know, you got one of two choices in my mind. I mean, I don't know
yeah.
what you think about that.
Oh yeah, like you said, this could turn into a whole other podcast. But no, I think it was a good talk today, Mark. And like self doubt is something that you have to manage it and you have to be aware of it. And it's completely related to your self confidence. And I guess the takeaway is, yeah, surround yourself with people to learn new things, get excited about things you don't know about. And then at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. I think that's contribution, right? So even your
Yeah.
success today was a was a great example of how your contribution is is um, is being recognized, but also being rewarded. So
Yeah. And I think thank you for that, Jim. And I'll end on, when I think back on the last couple of days, it was self-awareness was definitely triggered. It's like,
mhm,
wait, what is this? This is
mhm,
not, this doesn't feel good. What is this? And it's like, again, the choices, the better choices you have are like, okay, well, I can let this consume me, or I can go, no, I want to figure out what this is. I want to figure out why it's happening. And then I'm going to reach out to two sets of people and things. One is my tools, right? My
mhm,
self-help tools, my meditation, breathing, exercise, and my friends, my circle
mhm,
of friends who I know will pat me on the back, they'll lift me up, they'll tell me everything's going to be okay, and then they're all going to want to hear how it went, and after the fact I get to give back gratitude. So it was a really really interesting couple of days. I think it's something everyone goes through. Certainly middle-aged men go through it, and because we're all imperfect. And I think that recognize it when you can, become self-aware, and then do something about it. Don't let it consume you. And if
yeah,
all you can do is fight until the presentation's over and you get the win, I was it was pretty cathartic at the end. So thank you for allowing me to share that, Jim, and talk with you about it. I think it's an
yeah,
important topic for people.
yeah. We'll end on the imperfection is the perfection, right?
There you go. All
Yeah.
right, dude.
All right,
Talk
Mark.
to you next week.
Okay.